Misha here. Realized I haven't really done a true SIG video, as in Neuhausen, Switzerland, in a while. So I brought out the gun imported by JDI San Imports that I've had the longest. Started off buying, like everyone did, one of the SG551-LBs with the 14.3-inch barrel, which was cool and all back then, but you couldn't just add a stock. So when the LBs came out with the 17.8-inch barrel, that was a first and a very good thing. And my version here has the STANAG AR-15 mag compatible lower. It originally came with the Swiss one. This is the version with diopters. They've also done it with just pick rail or pick rail and diopters, so on and so forth. JDI San Imports has been the sole exclusive by law, by contract importer of these for almost a decade now. And I'm happy to say that I bumped into Dave, met Dave early on before even his first guns came in, and it's kind of a neat story. And really, the first video we ever did on the 551 SB at that time is the one video out of over 1,500 we've done that was actually taken down by YouTube for reasons that are still beyond me to this very day. So I thought we'd revisit. It also is a bit of a shocker to folks that between the full-size 550, the compact 552, 553, even the 751 and 308, the 551 is the only real version that the Swiss military itself has not ever actually fielded and used. Although they did adopt it, it did pass trials, technically speaking. That's why last year when I was needing to kind of finish off paying for the cabin, this was one of the guns that I considered letting go of, but I just couldn't. And I'll talk about that in the video too. As always, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. Like to help us out, and check out Patreon. No further ado, let's dust her off and run a few rounds. This isn't going to be my typical deep dive into history video. For one thing, late last year, did a very deep dive into the whole development of the SG550, the PE90, the SGW90, and before that we've looked at the 553 and 552 in various videos, so no need to really go over that again. The standard rifle that was used predominantly, several hundreds of thousands throughout the Swiss military, had a 20.8-inch barrel. Alongside it, though, was the so-called headquarters carbine developed in the 1980s, and it had a 14.3-inch barrel, and these links do include the flashider itself. The 551 carbine did pass Swiss trials and testing because it was essentially the same exact gun. In fact, from the rear of the handguard back, they're identical. The differences are in the gas system. It is shortened with a shortened piston, shortened spring, shortened tube, shortened handguard, and then, of course, the shortened barrel, which actually does save quite a bit of weight. So they were both accepted in 1990, but because of post-Cold War budget cuts, yes, the Cold War ending even affected a neutral nation like Switzerland, they felt, you know, the standard rifle version is enough for everyone. So the 551 was there and on the books, and SIG would set about trying to, sell it to export customers and the like in the 1990s. And the Swiss military really did not purchase many outside of testing and trials. Some sources say early on, before the 552 came, which was 1998, and of course the 553, which was 2007, that maybe a few 551s were picked up in what we would think of as a COTS purchase. just kind of off the shelf for like paratroopers and the like, but that's kind of shaky data. But we do know that Swiss law enforcement and other kind of police and security did have some of the 551s, because the original 14.3-inch barrel version is over a pound lighter than the full-sized gun. And even the LB here, which came out later in the 1990s, I know by 1998 the LB version was out. Not sure exactly when it came in the catalog. The barrel is 17.8, so 3.5 inches more. Even at that, this gun is still about a pound lighter, maybe just a little less than the full size. But I think what's more important, it balances very well. That's the stuff. Like I said, considered selling it because it isn't straight Swiss military, but you know, of all the versions, it's just so well gassed. It's heavy enough, long enough that you're not scrunched in like on a 5.52 or 5.53. Doesn't quite thump you like a 7.51. It's lighter, better balanced than a 5.50 PE90. It's just kind of, you know, like the Goldilocks thing, right in the middle and just right. You know, with compromises, sometimes you get a gun that's kind of neither fish nor fowl, and sometimes you hit on it right with a gun like this, where just kind of the best of both worlds. Here's my problem. This is not representative of anything in the Swiss Armed Forces, and typically I like service guns, but it's my favorite to shoot. I did seriously consider it, but bringing it out again today, I'm really glad I didn't sell it last year. I would have missed it. Sometimes it's just fun to keep the guns you enjoy shooting. And for me, this scuff back here on the ejection port, I know some folks, they put tape here or Velcro. Nah, it's a badge of honor. That means the gun has you know, seen real use, not abuse, just use. It has been there and done that as a tested platform. I don't mind honest wear that mechanisms get. Another good example is like on an AK, how the safety leaves that mark, or on a revolver, how the cylinder gets a ring from use. Those are okay. Here it is with Magpul, and I know some European guns have problems with Magpul. This one does not. In fact, it's the OEM mag that SIG Switzerland ships if you order a Stenag compatible lower gun. So, works fine. Over the years that I've had this set up, again, originally this came in as a pistol with a Swiss mag lower, but then these lowers, Stenag compatible with stock included, came over via JDI San Imports, and I popped it on, and it's pretty much stayed this way since then, and we have not noticed at all any mag sensitivity. We've tried pretty much every mag. We own different variations, and they all work, they all feed fine. It is absolutely not finicky, and you don't really give up much. You still have the same controls. They're almost completely ambidextrous. There's a couple of ones, like the bolt release is not. You have a hinge down trigger guard as opposed to kind of the fold-over style that the original SG55 types had, but other than that, it's the same. It's an alloy lower, which really does help on weight, meaning this is actually lighter than the original 551, even with the longer barrel. And here's the thing. I think this lower looks pretty good. That's actually important because when SIG-Sauer Incorporated introduced the SIG556 in 2006, 2007, I believe they first announced it was coming in 2006, and then it actually hit the market towards the end of 2007. It had a Stenag compatible lower, and it was alloy, but most folks said it was pretty fugly. Also, the original 556 that the U.S. company released did not feature a hinge for a folding stock. It was a full-length carbine with a 16, nearly 17-inch barrel. So it had a stock, but it had just a hole in the back for a buffer tube from an AR to screw in. Now, in 2009, they finally did introduce an update to the lower that actually took a Swiss pattern stock, but most folks still didn't like how the magwell looked and how it was machined. I admit that was totally aesthetic, but the Swiss version, which would come out a little bit later, but for kind of export customers, would kind of take over from there. And holds open. The US SIG-556 and later SIG-551-A1 were parts compatible with this gun. They used the long stroke gas piston system, AK inspired 2-lug bolt. Yes, Peanut. Everything was pretty much on board, but it really got down to QC and just the way they made their parts. But most of us had to settle for that for years. That's all we could do. And then we would start to kind of replace them with Swiss parts. Like, for example, the handguard was almost a must. The US handguards were absolutely crap. But then these started to slowly but surely become available in America. The first brand new imports were from M+M, and they were the 5.53 pistol. That was the first time. The first 5.51s came through another MM, that would be Mike Ott, who had those Louisiana wildlife fishing game guns. And then we get into the JDI era, 2016 to 2017 when that all kind of got going. The LBs came in 2018, and these were very small batch guns, typically 50 to 100 at most at one time. Stock just folds over and locks into the tab on the handguard. And would you believe that an all-black gun fired this much in that late June, early July heat is getting a little warm right here? Who'da thunk it? And you can fire it like this, although, well, you'd want to. It's beyond me, but it's better than a lot of them. In addition to being able to put a buttstock on with the long barrel, you also get the integrated flash hider. This is a single piece barrel. No, you can't remove it. It's not tack welded on. It's literally part of the mandrel. It is internally threaded for a blank fire device, though. Kind of neat. And with the short barrels, you can use those threads to put on an extension. It does have the bulge for a 22mm rifle grenade. It even comes with the spring. And then back here, at least when I bought it, this loop was empty, but you could put a bayonet lug in. A lot of folks go with the Swiss lug, but since this gun is kind of all black, since France and a few other more NATO aligned nations have been using these, I thought a NATO lug would be neat on this particular gun, and I've debated which bayonet goes best with it. And then I hit upon this one here. Let me know what you think. This is an Icorn KCB 77 bayonet, complete with squirrel, noose and squirrel Patrick. What do you think about it on this gun? I think it kind of fits the vibe of this gun. It's modern without too modern, and to me it's aesthetically very fitting. Sorry there, my hands are getting hot and sweaty. Yeah. Set it my match. Let Colton try the 5.51 out. The safety's on. The mag does have ammo in it. There is not one in the chamber, so you can just rack the bolt like you would on most guns and then take your safety off. He was getting familiar with the sights. These are the very traditional diopters. And they are pretty low profile, especially for someone used to like an AR-15. And that was intentional in Switzerland. The idea was you could prop one of these up behind some protection, a barricade, a rock wall, and just barely have to get your head over it to use the sights. They really wanted it low profile. It does have the dovetail mount for an optic or a rail, like a Hensoldt. Ironically, one of the funniest things to me is these days, because really only JDI orders these, in Switzerland they call these Americans. Yeah, they're iron sights. I think the one you're seeing that's the night sight.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That felt good.
It's a smooth shooter, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of climb. The SIG SG556 series has a reputation. I think it's more nuanced now that people finally get hands on them in America, thanks to JDI. But for years, there were so few pre-bans here, and they only had the U.S. copy. They kind of got a reputation for being pure perfection. And while I really do like this gun, you've heard me talk throughout this video about how smooth and nice it is. And according to Henry at 9-hole, the one I gave him years back is very accurate for what they are. By the way, they have them 1 in 10 twist and 1 in 7, just depending on which batch. They aren't without, you know, 1 or 2 flaws, at least 1 or 2 ergonomic quirks that bother some more than others. All right, let's try it with Phoenix ammo. Brass case. Helps if I take the safety off. Can't quite reach it. That is one complaint some say with these. Luckily the safety is ambi. It's a military trigger, and it's a military trigger intended for use in a mountain, so it's going to be pretty wide and kind of protected against accidental pullage. That is now a word, pullage. It is adjustable, but not in like a match target way. This plunger behind here, the stop that it hits, you can adjust how forward or how far back it goes, so you can tell it when to meet resistance, which kind of effectively lets you know how far to let off before coming back. It's difficult to explain, guys, but I can tell you if you mess with it and get it the way you want, it will make your shooting experience better. Some folks complain about the triggers on these. I think they're, for a military gun, especially one kind of meant to be used with gloves, very nice, very consistent, and the recoil is just so tame on these. Very nice. And some might not like, especially in the modern era where everything has to be suppressed, the fixed flash hider. I get it. That is kind of an artifact from the 80s. Now, with a lot of the 553 versions, it's a removable flash hider, and there are special runs of the 551 and 550, but most of them are single-piece barrels. On the other hand, not every gun has to be a suppressor host, in my opinion. I've had some customers ask about cutting it off, believe it or not. Again, don't do that. These are hard enough to get and expensive enough. Don't go chopping a barrel and making a permanent modification just so you can put a suppressor on this gun. If you want to run your suppressor, that's perfectly cool. Just do it on any of the other myriad guns out there. I'm just saying, if you go ahead, it's your gun. You can do what you want with it. But I just think older you will regret it. Got a mag here that's a little used and janky, so I'm going to load it up all the way with a bunch of kind of bottom of the bucket ammo that just collected at the bottom of the range bag and see how it does. So far, so good. One reason I wanted to bring this back out and do a video on the original SIG in Neuhausen, Switzerland. You know, the last video I put out was on SIG-Sauer Incorporated up in Exeter, New Hampshire. And on the XM7M7, all the controversy from the P320 seems to have kind of spilled over to everything with the SIG brand name on it. that's neither here nor there for this video, but I will say don't let it taint it for you with the originals. Now, after the end of the Cold War in the 1990s, things happened. By 2000, the big SIG parent company was basically splitting apart, and the firearms division, the building and everything, was spun off into its own company, Swiss Arms Neuhausen. And this was actually purchased by a German holding company, basically an investment group, L&O, Luken Ortmeyer. This is the connection between the two SIGs, and actually three SIGs, because going back to the 70s, you had SIG-Sauer GmbH in West Germany. SIG partnered with Sauer Son for export reasons to manufacture and market the P220 and P226 and so on and so forth. Well, back around, what was it, 2018, 2019, the factory in Germany was closed down, leaving the factory in Switzerland and the factory in the U.S. Well, the U.S. factory actually got started as SIG-Sauer, an importer of SIG-Sauer products out of Germany, not even directly out of Switzerland, but they did do the rifles and carbines in this family here. That would eventually evolve into SIG-Sauer Incorporated, moving up to New Hampshire and their own product line. And by 2000, 2005, things are really splitting apart, and the two companies go very different directions. Legally, they're two separate companies. They have two totally different management ownership structures. They just so happen to be owned by the same investment group out of Germany, but they do their own thing. Action. At the very most, you could say they're sibling companies, but one has no more say over what the other does than you do with your... They're both SIG-Sauer. It's just SIG-Sauer Incorporated versus SIG-Sauer AG. Sorry, it's confusing. There you go. But the main takeaway is Switzerland specializes in this line of guns and newer models like the 751, and most recently they've gone to like the SG561 and SG563, modernized 21st century versions of this gun. SIG USA seems bad and determined to focus on controversy in the American market. Very different. Good. I will say this gun in this form is easier to kind of double tap than it is to really kind of string fire. It'll work. Even on all that random ammo, it ate it all. And that's on the normal gas. Since this has a single piece barrel, it does not have the four-way regulator. It just has normal and adverse conditions. You know, I say on this channel that everyone can and will turn out a lemon or make a mistake. And this gun right here, when it first came over from Switzerland, is an example of what was at the time still SAN making a mistake. Now, it wasn't a huge one. I'm not going to get there. But what they did, they put in the wrong gas regulator. For every barrel length of their guns and for every twist rate of their guns, they actually have a specific port. Obviously, the longer the barrel, the smaller the port. The problem is when they first shipped over the 551-LBs, they accidentally put the 551-SB regulators in them, meaning that they were a tad gassy. But ironically, they felt about as gassy as the US-made versions. Luckily, they absolutely did make it right. They sent over the correct LB. Easy enough to fix, but it does go to show you that everyone makes a mistake. But it also shows you that SIG really tunes these guns. In 2025, JDI is still the exclusive importer of the real SIG product. And one more mag for today, because it's hot. Just a smooth, very nice. According to the owner, Dave Wagner, not yet. Everything's kind of in a holding pattern, he said, until the middle of July when the whole tariff thing gets settled. Apparently, they're supposed to have a firm decision on what the tariffs will or won't be. We'll lock it down by like July 10 or so. Until that time, everyone is just waiting, not even sure what to do. I'm not going to go into details, but I will say that new models have been submitted for approval for importation, but haven't heard back yet. It's almost as if it doesn't matter who's in the White House. Bureaucracy gonna bureaucracy. But it's not a dead brand, and hopefully we will see some new stuff by the end of the year or next year from Switzerland. Because there's something else. I'm not going to say the 55X series is for everyone, but I would say that everyone should at least get a chance to shoot. At any rate, it was definitely getting hot and sweaty out there, very stickly. It's that time of year, guys. But no, I'm really happy I didn't sell it. I didn't really want to. I was just needing to pay for the well. The 751 went instead. If nothing else, this is a lot cheaper to shoot. But it really is my favorite shooter, even if it's the most unimportant one when you're talking Swiss history. On it, just in case you were wondering, this is the factory tactical sling. Still has the hooks, much wider. It's got these buckles, and yeah, it's definitely a more modern sling compared to the original, but still pretty classic, and I like it. It's relatively light and flexible. Another reason I think I like this, aside from how it shoots, this is what I wanted the US SIG-556 to be. I didn't mind that it took AR mags. Heck, it's even kind of desirable. Makes life easier, not just the cost of mags, but the fact that I didn't have to pack to the cabin a whole different type of mag. I keep AR mags out here. I don't even mind, the Stanag lug and everything. I think it's a neat look. And, being all black and kind of a more modern look, that's cool too. But there's just something different about the real Swiss over the US, and I'm not trying to be a snob. We've done many videos essentially praising the SIG-556, SIG-551-A1. They run very well. They're just not quite as smooth. They're not quite as soft shooting. They show wear and tear a little faster. This gun's had thousands of rounds through it, and the insides still look great. I'd show you, but here on YouTube, they get a little about getting to what they were, afraid of being gunsmithing. But you can look up videos. The parts are nothing mechanically that special, but the machining on them, like the bolt group, is great. And most people I knew that had a 556 either just sold it and forgot about it, or eventually just ended up getting a Swiss one. Because anyway, I appreciate you hanging out today. I just wanted to have something different out and kind of remind you that not all SIGs are that SIG. There are really good ones besides. And that JDI, San Imports, is still working down in Texas, Dave. And hopefully we'll have some new stuff to talk about from them in the next 6 months or a year, assuming tariffs and import permissions and all that go through. And then meanwhile, I'll enjoy this gun. And if you haven't, search the channel for some of our other Swiss videos. We've covered pretty much everything. Let me know your favorite configuration. No, this one remains my favorite as a shooter. If I can only have one, it would still probably have to be the PE90 because it's just the classic. I think on cool factor, the 5.52 Commando is the coolest. But the problem with shooting it a bunch is, where are you going to find replacement 5.52 parts? Yeah, exactly. So this one, at least I know I can get the basic spare parts from JDI if I need them, firing pin, extractor, that kind of thing. Not that I expect it to break it. These have a very good combat track record for not breaking major parts, but anything's possible, guys, anytime you go shooting. And again, most of today was with the Phoenix ammo. We've had really good luck with it through other guns too. We did try a little other stuff, some Arms Corps. There might have been some Aguila in there. maybe even a little of the old wolf. Just we did that kind of range bag dump of random ammo, and there's a little of this, little steel, little brass. But hey, the gun took it without a complaint, like it should. But let me know your favorites and your thoughts. Any of these picking them up? Really, Peanut? You got one too? I know it. You could jump up here and say hi to the people. Yeah. I think she's telling me it's time to let it go. So I appreciate you hanging out today. Hope everyone has a good week as we head into the holiday season of 4th of July. Any plans? I've got kind of an informal family reunion going on I'm looking forward to. With that, also on behalf of Peanut, we'll both catch you very soon next time.